Hey everybody, welcome back to Let's Talk. My name is John, and today we're going to be talking about 2007's Zodiac and its brand new 4K Blu-ray that just came out from Paramount. But before we get into that 4K Blu-ray review, I always like to give a quick film review, and today's no different. So if you want to skip ahead to that 4K Blu-ray review without any spoilers, you guys could do that right now. So Zodiac was released in 2007. It is directed by David Fincher. The screenplay was done by James Vanderbilt, and it is based on two books by Robert Graysmith, who in this movie is actually played by Jake Gyllenhaal. The movie also stars Mark Ruffalo and Robert Downey Jr. Robert Downey Jr. 1 year before his big breakout performance, his comeback performance, a lot of people like to consider in Iron Man, but he did Kiss Kiss Bang Bang and Zodiac before he did Iron Man, so he was really on the comeback trail. And this is directed by David Fincher, who is one of my favorite directors, and I remember when I saw Zodiac, it blew me away. I mean, I had this as my favorite Fincher film for a while now. I've kind of cooled off a little bit on this because I kind of feel like on rewatch, it does always kind of go down a little bit, especially since Manhunter's come out, because I just want to see more of this type of stuff. And also, the movie makes a decision on who they believe the Zodiac Killer is, which I'm not 100% sure. I used to do a lot of research on the Zodiac Killer, but I kind of stopped, mainly because I got kind of obsessed with this movie in high school. So the Zodiac Killer always fascinated me. So for those who don't know, the Zodiac Killer was a serial killer in the 1960s and 1970s who never was caught. And at this point, you know, if he was, let's just say like he was 18 years old in 1968, you know, he's going to be about 84 years old now, saying that he was probably young at that age, which I'm going to guess, I mean, from what I understand, he was probably a little bit older than 18, so more than likely he's probably passed away, and we're probably never going to find out who the real Zodiac Killer was. The movie itself makes a decision on who they believe the Zodiac Killer was and who Robert Graysmith, you know, with these two books, believed it was, especially since he was working side by side with Paul Avery at the time, who's played by Robert Downey Jr. in this movie, and was talking to I believe it was Mike Tossi, played by Mark Ruffalo. So they all kind of had a belief, and that's what the film comes to the belief, especially in 2007. I'm not 100% sure where they stand with the Zodiac Killer now, but if you just watch this movie just as a film and not even think about it, that's a real killer, and they try and come to these conclusions about who the killer is, and just watch the movie, it's one of the best movies just ever constructed as far as a screenplay goes, and the fact that David Fincher just knows how to make a movie. It's riveting from beginning to end. A movie like this, you would think at its length, I believe it's 2 hours and 40 minutes, you know, you would feel like it would be dragging along, especially since you know that the killer never gets caught. Now, when you're going into that, you know, how does a movie like this, a true story where you know the killer doesn't get caught, become exciting? Like, how do you build the tension? Well, just watch the basement scene in this movie if you want an example of great tension. You also throw in some great performances. I mean, Jake Gyllenhaal, Mark Ruffalo, and Robert Downey Jr., three of our great actors. All three of them have worked in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Obviously, it's funny seeing Mark Ruffalo and Robert Downey Jr. before the MCU even started in this movie. All of them looking younger than they do now. Jake Gyllenhaal especially. This is kind of during babyface Jake Gyllenhaal. And, you know, he plays like a Boy Scout in this movie, and it works. It works for his character, and it also really shows his obsession with finding the Zodiac Killer. He starts off as like this naive, like kind of like innocent guy, but he's going to throw his entire marriage away, his second marriage away, just because he's obsessed with figuring out who the Zodiac Killer is. That obsession is a huge part of this movie as well. Look at what it does to Paul Avery. These killings not only ruin the lives of the people it killed, but the people who were doing the investigating, who were doing the reporting, because they never figured it out. Like Mark Ruffalo's character, you know, his relationship with the Anthony Edwards character, you know, when they end up splitting apart, like, it kind of tells him, like, you know, are you all right? Like, it just kind of, am I leaving you with the bag on this kind of stuff? And he's like, no, it's fine, even though this case is just wearing him down. Even these characters don't realize they're just falling into this obsession, and you know, it's hurting them and hurting the people around them as much as it's hurting the victims. And then another thing about this movie is that it was shot with 1080p digital cameras, and certain scenes were shot with fast-moving 35mm film, mainly the scenes where they would show the killings, which are some of the most horrifying things in the movie, even though you might not see everything. It's not the bloodiest and goriest kind of stuff, but it's petrifying. Just how matter-of-fact the Zodiac Killer was. The fact that he would get on the phone and call them after he did it, confess to everything, send these coded letters. You know, even, you know, how they show these scenes. Like, one thing that always gets me is one of the, I think it's the second killing of this movie, where he shows him the clip from the gun. You shouldn't doubt me. Like, just how matter-of-fact the Zodiac Killer is. and the way it's shown in this film, it's all done so well. But those 1080p cameras, now when we get to the 4K Blu-ray review, we'll talk a little bit more about that. But it's in this digital age. It's in the early days of digital. But I think, comparison to other movies at the time that were using this, like Michael Mann's Collateral, which came out around the same time, and Miami Vice, those movies I feel like don't look very good because of the digital. Whereas we got David Fincher making this movie who pays attention to every little detail. There's a famous story Mark Ruffalo tells about this movie where he thought he was getting fired, and David Fincher walks right by him to move an extra like 1 inch to the left. That's just how much little tiny details bother David Fincher. It's the reason why he does so many takes for his films and why he has so much of his actors, why they really, don't always come back to work with him, because they just feel like they're pawns in his, in his movie, which a lot of directors have said that, especially I think Alfred Hitchcock has even said in the past. I don't know what the exact quote is, but David, aka Shamrock Balls, will tell me where it's like, basically you got to treat actors like cattle. Like they're just another part for the directors, because the director's got to worry about everything. He's got to worry about how the movie's going to be edited, how it's being shot. He's the boss. So of course he doesn't have a great working relationship like with the actors. He just needs them to deliver his lines and give him the performance that he wants. Luckily for him, because he's such a good director, he does still attract all these big time actors. That way he always gets these great performances out of them. And I do think he nailed it with this movie. It is one of my favorite David Fincher movies. I can't put it at number 1 or number 2, but it's floating right around that number 3 mark. I still absolutely love this movie, and it's basically like a pilot for what would eventually become Manhunter, which David Fincher was the creator of that show, and you could see the bones of Manhunter in the movie Zodiac, and it still kills me that we only got those 2 seasons of Manhunter, and then they just stopped making them, because I absolutely loved Manhunter. It's one of my favorite shows of all time. We only got 2 seasons of it, which makes no sense in the world where true crime is king nowadays. You would think that a show like Manhunter would be on top of the world, but apparently it was just too expensive to make, which I can understand. It is a business, but either way, we'll always have those 2 seasons of that show, and we'll always have the movie Zodiac. So without further ado, let's talk about this Paramount 4K Blu-ray.
Are you sure there's nobody else in the house?
Well, here it is, Zodiac on 4K Blu-ray, courtesy of Paramount, which will be replacing this Blu-ray of Zodiac, which is supposed to look like a letter, because the Zodiac killer, he mailed letters, so this was actually pretty cool. It's completely useless now, because if you come inside to this 4K Blu-ray, which I do like the artwork, and this came to digital 4K before it actually came to 4K Blu-ray physically, almost unannounced, by the way, which was kind of weird, which is a bad sign. Unlike with like 7 and the future 4K Blu-ray release of Fight Club, David Fincher, I don't think, took part in the making of this 4K Blu-ray. It felt like Paramount just kind of wanted to put this one out. And it's very reflective of that when we get into more of this 4K Blu-ray review. But there's your 4K Blu-ray, and then you have your 2 Blu-rays in blue, classic Paramount. Now, these 2 Blu-rays are the exact same 2 Blu-rays that I have over here. So you have Disc 1, which will have the film on it. Even though the Blu-ray right here says special features on it for Disc 1, that is not true. It's just a misprint, which I used to call out the studios for that, but it's kind of stupid at this point. Mistakes happen. It's not a big mistake. So just the film is on the Blu-ray, and then all of your special features and extras are going to be on this second Blu-ray right here. Now, you get no new extras, but you probably don't need them. This is the one time where I will take my hating of not putting new extras on Blu-ray, and I'm going to forego it, because you know what? The extras that we get on that second Blu-ray, not only do you get a great hour-long making of documentary, but you also get a full documentary on the Zodiac killer on there as well. That's almost an hour. So everything you could have really wanted. You even get a good featurette about the CGI in this movie, about 16 minutes long. Makes you really appreciate those VFX, especially in 2007. And, you really don't notice them in this movie. There are times where the backgrounds will look a little artificial, but, a lot of that can be credited probably to the digital cameras of the time and the CGI, not being the greatest. But still, a lot of the movie takes place, like, when they have those CGI shots, a lot of it's at night, which obviously will cover up a lot of the issues. If you put it in the brightness of the day, all that stuff becomes a lot more obvious, so you can hide it in the darkness. And now, what about this 4K Blu-ray? Well, as far as the audio goes, Paramount is the king of reusing the old audio, and especially those old Dolby True HD 5.1s. Every Paramount release, for the most part, there's been a couple instances where we haven't talked about, where they, have had new audio, but for the most part, they've reused those old Dolby True HD 5.1s. Look at some of the Paramount Presents releases, especially, and then look at like Mean Girls for another example. And they are at the mercy of those releases. How was it at the time? Some have been good and some have been bad. This is one that I think falls right in the middle. It's pretty damn good, actually. It's not one of the worst Dolby True HD 5.1s I've ever heard. They actually made good use of the channel, so it's not something that's a complete failure. It's just Zodiac is one of those great David Fincher movies, so we would have liked a new audio track. You would think it would get a new audio track, but this just kind of felt like Paramount. We put the movie out on 4K on digital, we can just put it out on physical. And then that's reflected in the visuals, which have HDR10 and Dolby Vision. And when I look at that previously released Blu-ray, and when you compare them, there is not a big difference between that Blu-ray and the brand new 4K Blu-ray, which is very disappointing, especially if you go out and buy this 4K Blu-ray, because you're not going to see a big jump. And it's Paramount. Paramount drops the ball a lot of time. We still haven't talked about Ghost on 4K Blu-ray. Paramount is obviously going through a change right now with Skydance buying them or Skydance merging with them. And I feel like the physical media division, which was rumored to be going away, they're just kind of half-assing these releases. But then I have to also ask myself, especially if you guys follow HD Movie Source on the artist formerly known as Twitter, they pointed out that this film was shot with 1080p cameras. And then if you look more into it, they used 35mm film, like fast-moving 35mm film to shoot some other scenes. But for the most part, this is at the beginning of the digital age. So bringing this movie to 4K Blu-ray, you're really just upscaling it from a very low quality source. And like I said, the movie is so well shot that when you watch that previously released Blu-ray, it does look pretty good. So you're not going to be improving it that much when you come to 4K Blu-ray, other than the HDR and Dolby Vision. Now, they probably could have gone on in there and, touched it up and made it look a lot better had, maybe they were working with a boutique label or had David Fincher in there. But for a regular studio putting the movie out, they're not going to go that extra mile. And it reflects that. It's just not a great 4K Blu-ray transfer, but it's also not a horrible one. It's just that you don't see a big difference from Blu-ray to 4K Blu-ray. And if you were like me and you were really excited for Zodiac to be coming to 4K Blu-ray and you had to have it on day one, like myself, just because you love the movie, you're definitely going to be disappointed with this 4K Blu-ray. But if you don't own it at all, those extras are great. The movie itself does look really good. The audio is fine. So it's really going to come down to, do you have this previously released Blu-ray or not? If you do, I would definitely say, hey, take a pass on this one. You're not really missing much at all, other than some very minor improvements. But if you don't own it at all, might as well grab the 4K Blu-ray. It will be on sale at some point. It is a Paramount release. It's a studio release, so eventually this will drop in price, especially if people aren't picking it up. Right around the $15 to $20 range, that's where this 4K Blu-ray is perfect. How would I score Zodiac on a score of 1 to 10? I would give Zodiac an alright 6.5 out of 10. I would just give it a passing grade because I really don't think it's more than that, but it's also not an outright failure. But that's going to do it here for me on another episode of Let's Talk. I really hope you guys enjoyed the show, and if you did, don't forget to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, turn notifications on, share this video if you could, and we also have channel memberships. So if you want to become a friend of the channel or a producer for the channel like John Doe Juggalo and Jed Eckerd, or if you want to become a channel director like Frank from Frank's Media Reviews and Mr. Smelly Potato, you can do all of that, and look for all that information in the description below. But guys, I almost forgot, it's Friday, and that means it's time for our digital code giveaway. In every single video that we do here on Friday, I ask you guys 2 digital code giveaway questions. All you got to do is answer 1 in the comment section below. As long as you do that, you come back to this Tuesday's video where I'll put your name on a magic wheel. I'll spin that bad boy 2 times. The 2 names it lands on, they have their choice of the digital codes that you've seen on your screen before you today. And we just got done talking David Fincher, and I want to know from you guys, what is your favorite David Fincher film, and what is your favorite film based on a true story? That has to be a real true story, not like Fargo where they say it's a true story, but it's not really a true story. So leave those answers in the comment section below. And then I'll see you guys on Tuesday. Just remember, if you enjoyed this video, get out in those streets, tell your friends about us, and then we'll be seeing you around.